And I'll start presenting. But as I say, if you've got any questions or there's something you'd like to, you know, chat about further, please feel free, please ask. So this evening it is about what we should see in the classroom. Now we're looking at blended learning more and more within our schools. We really need to be thinking about what it actually is we should be seeing when we go, or we're able to go back into schools and have a look around. So tonight we'll cover understanding how that face-to-face classroom will evolve and what to expect in a blended learning environment and what that will look like. To know sort of what kind of questions to ask subject leaders regarding blended learning. So again, when we're able to go back into schools and have a look around, what your questions might be to those subject leaders. And to know how to find the most useful and relevant information about blended learning environments at the moment. And then also the last point is about the fact this is a transformational time for education, and just to think about each school having its own slightly different journey with this blended learning approach. So that's what we'll try and cover this evening. But as I say, if you've got any questions or points to raise, please feel free to ask. So the first slide before I go into this presentation this evening is about the EdTech Demonstrator programme. I'm the EdTech Demonstrator for Kibworth Primary School and Discovery Schools Trust, and the programme supports a lot of schools all around the country nationally. But if you do know of any of the schools that are on their EdTech journey or need support with their EdTech journey and they don't know where to turn, they're not sure who to ask, then please feel free, guide them to this EdTech Demonstrator webpage here, and they can log in and look to which school they would like support from. I think there's 42 schools now still involved with the programme, so they can either ask for Kibworth Primary School or they can request another school that might be a little bit closer to them, and they can get support that way. And it's just peer-to-peer, school-to-school support. It's very much about what we're doing, and we just share literally what we're doing with them. So it's a nice approach, but as I say, if you do know any schools that do need that support, please feel free to guide them to that webpage there. And if you've missed any of the webinars that we've done so far, they are on the Discovery Schools website, the Discovery Schools Trust website. We've uploaded all of those webinars we've recorded so far, so please feel free to go back and have a look at those. The last one we did in OnetoOne is uploaded there now, and that was about what blended learning actually is and what the impact has been on education. So again, please refer to those if you need to. They are there. So I just thought I'd start with what the difference is now between a classroom environment in 2018 as opposed to what it looks like now. And actually in primary, it's probably not that different just yet. But in some cases, pupils will still be working in rows depending on the school context at the moment, depending on whether they've got COVID-19 or not within their schools. They might still have to be working in bubbles, but generally classrooms should be returning to groups of tables and pupils being able to discuss their learning with more than just their talk partners, you know, so they can talk in groups instead, which is really nice. And you should still see now that there are working walls, there's still displays, the concrete resources are still there, reading books in the classroom, you know, the carpet spaces are all there, and the classroom settings are still probably what you would expect to see, is what I'm saying, but they will hopefully over time, over the next few months and years, start to evolve and look just slightly different. And I say that because of the technology, but also about active learning being a big part of this journey now, because both the technology and the active learning really inspire that pupil engagement, and that's what we really need to embrace and embed in schools. So there's a new shift in teaching, and educators are really moving away, as they have done for quite a while now, but they're moving away more and more so from that belief that all pupils are ready to learn the same thing at the same time in the same way. So really moving away from that. That learning is passive. We've known over a number of years now that it's supposed to be really active as well and engaging, but in some schools, in some cases, it's still a little bit passive, and we're working on that. We're moving away from the fact that one teacher can be all things to all pupils simultaneously, and we're really trying to change that picture that learning happens under teacher control. As we know, it's definitely not that. It's about the fact that we're learning and we're working alongside the pupils, and we're really going making sure that it's a joint effort, and we're showing that mistakes are a good thing, that we learn from those, and actually it's okay to make that mistake as long as you understand it was a misconception and you go back and talk about it again and discuss it. So we need active learning spaces, as I say, for this digital age learning. And as you can see here in this top image, this is a Year 3 classroom in one of our schools in the Trust. And here the pupils and the teacher are using OneNote in their maths lesson. You can't quite see there, but on the whiteboard, the interactive whiteboard, that's the teacher's version of OneNote that he's using to teach with. And the pupils have that also on their devices, and they're using their class notebook to upload their learning and their work. So this app is allowing pupils to collaborate and communicate with their teacher within the lesson now, whilst the pupils are working on a question. The teacher in this image, he hasn't got his device in his hand, but usually the teacher now has the laptop in their hand as well, and they can give feedback to the pupils within the lesson. Peter, you've got your hand up. Did you want to ask something?
Yeah, you've just referred to another frame to look at. I can't see anything. I just wonder if anybody else can.
Oh, right. Sorry, could you not see the picture at the top, the classroom setting?
No, I've just got your picture on one side, and I've got BG on one, and then below that, there's the butcher.
I'm okay.
That's not good. Leslie, can you see?
Yes, I've got it.
You can see the slides, can you, Leslie?
Yes, yes.
Great. Peter, I'm not so sure about that. Peter, do you want to try leaving and coming back in again?
Okay,
Sometimes,
we'll do.
Is that all right? Thank you.
Okay.
I'll just give Peter a couple of minutes. Shouldn't take too long.
Were you just saying then, Joe, that the children will have the same image on their tablets that the teacher's got on the board?
Yes. So the OneNote, it's really clever. It's quite something, because the teacher has obviously the lesson on the OneNote, but he will then copy that and put that onto the child's class notebook as well, and also the learning tasks that they want the children to complete as well. So the children can refer back to the teacher notes as well as looking at the learning tasks too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we'll just see if Peter can join us there. But yes, hopefully, as I say, when you get back into the classrooms or go and have a learning walk around a school, you'll see OneNote being used in place of the active whiteboard slides instead, because they used to have flip chart slides, and in some cases schools are still using those, but they're moving over to OneNote a bit more, and more towards PowerPoint as well too. So I'll just I'm hoping Peter can get back in, but I might just move on. Is that okay, Leslie and Barbara? Yeah. So on the next slide, slightly futuristic, this one. I don't think we're definitely not at this stage yet, but these are devices and technology that in schools you'll start to see again over a few months, years, start to be in place. Things like 3D printers and VR headsets will be used within lessons, so the children can be fully immersed in their learning and really experience that multi-sensory approach with different things. That's good. So Barbara, you can see the slides as well. That's great. That's good.
I was just about to say as well, Joe, is my son recently had the VR headsets in school, and they've been learning about the Great Fire of London, so they were able to explore London in that period using the headsets, and he said it was brilliant, absolutely amazing. So really embedded in, you know, with the learning.
That's great. What year group is he in? 2. In year 2, great. That's fantastic. And I think it might be something I talk about later on as well, because I know we did some open days last week, and the school was using the VR headsets for looking at London then. So it might have been your son's class. I was visiting, possibly Barbara. So the blended learning approach will not allow, obviously, schools to evolve instantly, but we've got implementation plans, as you know, in place, and they're going to allow them to plan ahead and to allow the pupils and the staff and the learning environments to transform so that they can incorporate these future-ready learning skills for teachers and pupils, really. These learning structures will change, and the technology will be a key part of the classroom environment. And as you mentioned there, you know, year 2s using virtual reality headsets are working perfectly in the classroom. In this image here at the bottom of the screen, we've got year 2 pupils, and they are using tablets to reflect on their learning using an app called Tapestry. And they take a little picture of their work, and then they write a reflection at the bottom, and that's then shared with their teacher, but also shared with their parents at home. So if they go home and their parents say, "What have you been doing today?" and the child turns around and say, "I don't know, can't remember," then the parent can go into Tapestry and have a look at what the child has reflected on and uploaded that day. So it's really nice to kind of triangulate that learning journey for parents as well as staff. So, you know, you can see the power in using the devices and the technology really here. The devices, again, in this picture have been blended into the lesson, and they're used just like another learning tool now. The children don't see them as this wow moment anymore. They do see the equipment as a tool. It's just like having their workbook out on the table. They use the device in the same way now. To get onto the different apps and the different platforms for the younger children, you will hopefully see things like QR codes being used in the lessons. So a QR code is really useful because they just aim the tablet or the iPad at the QR code, and it takes the child directly to the platform or the app that the teacher wants them to go onto. And there's no lost learning then, because obviously, if we ask children to go onto the World Wide Web and search for something, it will take probably 10, 15 minutes for them to find the actual website. With the QR code, it directs them straight to the site that they need to look at. So it's a lot of, you know, it's very efficient, is what I'm trying to say there with the QR codes. But the way we're doing this is to personalize that learning journey for pupils, and I've put here that time, place, pace and path on here, and this refers back to that first webinar that I did in OnetoOne. It's about giving children the time now for their learning, the right place to learn in, so that's why I keep talking about the learning environment, and now that will hopefully change too. It's also about the child's pace as well. Obviously, children learn at a different pace, so giving them that ability to choose the pace that they learn at, and also what learning pathway they choose to take as well. And with technology, teachers will be able to create different pathways and personalize it more now. So, you know, this journey is very exciting. But as you can see on this slide, I've also put the fact that you will still see, though, tablets, QR codes, technology, workbooks, pencils, rulers, scissors, all being used side by side, hence the name blended learning. And we're hoping as well that you'll see blended learning models being used. So you'll see maybe whole class one-to-one devices being out within a lesson, or it might be that you see just a few groups having technology on the tables, but the rest of the class just using traditional methods of learning within a lesson. Or it might be that you see a group in the classroom using a pre-recorded lesson, so they will have the headphones on and the device in front of them, and they're watching their teacher in a pre-recorded lesson, and they're learning from their teacher in that way, whilst the rest of the class are working with the teacher in the normal traditional way, using that direct instruction at the front, used on the whiteboard. So there's a few models here that you'll start to see as well, which again will really help the teacher to be able to access and teach a variety of children at the right pace at the right time. In some of our schools, as I've just mentioned, they're lucky enough to have the one-to-one devices, not all of them, but some of them, and that means that the devices can be accessed by the pupils any time during the day. You'll tend to see the one-to-one devices used mainly in Key Stage 2 in terms of the laptops, but in some cases, some of the schools also have tablets and iPads that they can access on a one-to-one basis too. So with that in mind, that enables the teacher to be able to use the devices in their maths lessons, English, reading lessons. You'll start to see it being used occasionally, not all the time, but throughout the week in those lessons and foundation subject lessons too. The pupils and the teachers can both use the OneNote app and the class notebook, and they can record their learning, they can give feedback, they can access assessments, they can communicate with it really well with each other. And so that's really changing the way that we're teaching and the pupils are learning. So it is a very transformational time at the moment. On this slide, you can see this is a Year 4 class, and they're using something called Flipgrid. So what they've done here, they've recorded the teacher set a question, and they've recorded their answer using a video on Flipgrid. And you can see the teacher has put all of their video clips up on the whiteboard here, and they're all reviewing them at the end of the lesson, and they're sharing their video clips and their answers together. So that collaboration is going on. The teacher as well, you can see, is untethered from not necessarily the whiteboard, but he's untethered from his desk. So he's not just having to sit at his desk using the computer there with the mouse. He can move around the classroom with his laptop, because the laptops that we've invested in now in our schools are touchscreen, and so that enables the teachers to move around the classroom and work with groups, but also be able to model on the whiteboard as well. And again, as I've mentioned here, you'll see often the laptops, the devices out, but also workbooks will be out as well. Obviously, we still value both. We want to see what work, you know, that handwriting in the books and their ideas going down in the paper form, but also we want to see it being used in the digital way as well, so that their digital skills are also developing alongside the skills that they are using in their books as well. Now this image here is, again, forward thinking, so please take this one with a pinch of salt. It's not happening probably just yet, especially in primary. It possibly is happening in colleges and universities, but on a primary level and secondary, this is something that we're aspiring to, again, over the next few years. But these classroom settings need to be flexible, and we need to have layouts that can break apart quickly, but also go back together again quickly with ease, so that teachers can create the right learning structures for the pupils, depending on the lesson and depending on the lesson content that they're trying to teach the children. So head teachers are really having to reflect on the best use of technology and the best use of furniture now when they're purchasing and looking at their budgets moving forward with their implementation plans. I think there's a big fear around the fact that technology would make pupils possibly passive learners and a bit sort of insular with the way that they're learning, but actually it's creating a need for active learning spaces, because the pupils learn best when they're able to walk around, swivel on a chair or stand, and using the technology alongside that is creating a really exciting, vibrant learning space to be in. And as you can see here, that we've got some really nice collaborative learning stations, but they also have that sort of smaller version of the whiteboard actually on the desk there, which is, again, really useful, especially for those children that might struggle to see the whiteboard at the front of the classroom. It gives them a nice, easy access to the learning via their devices as well on the stations. But again, this model isn't necessarily something you'll see too soon in primaries, but something I think to keep at the back of your mind, because that's what we would like to be aiming for there. But you can also see the teacher station in the centre there. We still want teachers to be supporting the learning and obviously coaching the pupils, working with them on either in a small group or one-to-one, but also then pulling them back for those mini plenaries as a whole group to reflect on what they're doing and what they're learning about. So active learning environments need to make that technology accessible to pupils whenever they need it and however they need to use it as well. So we need to cater for the pupils' learning individually, in groups, virtually and face-to-face. And we need to leverage the technology to support richer face-to-face interactions. Hence why we're really building in and embedding the blended approach in schools, and because we really want that high level of cognitive learning to be happening in our classrooms. The blended approach also allows effective differentiated learning to happen, and it allows the teachers to coach the pupils more readily too. And so you can see really that the blended approach, that 21st century learning skill set that we want the pupils to have, is really going to move forward. So the idea that we want pupils to be critical thinkers, problem solvers, good communicators, creative, proactive, all those things will develop in these kind of learning environments with the enriched space, learning space, but also with the great technology that we are trying to embed as schools. We also want the children to think about the learning, so that learning to learn that they are doing. We want them to interact with each other and self-express. So, you know, we really want to develop them as learners in these spaces. And in this picture, you can see again that they've got the laptops out. They're using, I think, something called Book Creator here. This is a nice app because this allows the pupils to take their piece of work that they've been learning about in the lesson and put it into an actual digital book, so they can make an ebook and be the author of their work. And again, a lovely way to share the outcome of their learning. And again, the teachers can share those books that they've created on the whiteboard at the front of the class with everybody, and they can discuss them, but they can also then share them with their families and friends as well, and be really proud of that learning. And again, I've put here that you should be seeing more pre-recorded lessons within live lessons as well, those face-to-face lessons here. Now, it's another example of how you can vary the furniture in the classrooms. These learning spaces and the technology amplify the learning experience for all the pupils, and they by refreshing the configurations and the furnishings within these learning environments, educators can create really subtle and dramatic changes in that classroom culture and the interactions and the engagements of the pupils. Again, this is more of a secondary model that you can see here, but I want you to kind of look at, I suppose, the standing tables that you've got in the background area here. These are something that we are looking at because, again, we know pupils learn in different ways, and the way that we sit at tables with devices or when we're writing in our workbooks need to be comfortable. And these tables are really clever because you can control the height of them. You can raise them and lower them, and you can see that they're on wheels as well. So the nice thing about them is you can also push them together, or obviously separate them, move them apart. You know, you can control the group sizes in your lesson as well. So you can really start manipulating the layout of your lesson for the learners. I do like the idea of the soft furnishings here, but I'm not sure the soft seating would possibly work as well for primary. But again, it's just an idea, and you can see how it's evolving and how these will change. But again, you still got the idea that you would have the teacher feedback station there, but pupils would be collaborating, working in groups, and really having those great discussions around what they're learning about. And it's amazing how these environments will channel and really focus the learning for pupils as they start to evolve. So we're not just thinking about devices and technology, we really are thinking about the actual learning environment and the furniture and the ergonomics of the room too. So schools probably need to think about not getting rid of all their furniture, but maybe repurposing their furniture, the existing furniture they have, maybe looking at possibly doing a little bit of fundraising around it, but also ask the children what they think, what they like, add in new features, but monitor it and assess it, see what works, adapt it. Don't, you know, think that the first option is probably going to be the best. And I think that's what our head teachers are looking at the moment. So because technology really is reshaping our classrooms and our schools, as you can see in that top picture there. In this bottom picture here, you can see Kahoot being used. This is being used in an EYFS classroom. So again, a QR code was used and the children are using tablets to access this the Kahoot quiz that they're doing with their teacher. And this was based on a phonics lesson. So, you know, a really nice way to use Kahoot there. But there are other things that our schools are using. Minecraft Education Edition is being used. VR headsets, microbits, drones are all being embedded now, and as a trust we're very lucky because we've purchased those, as you've probably already heard about, but so the schools are really using those now. I've got a timetable, a schedule for all the schools to have this equipment in, so the teachers are really building these into their plans and their lessons now. And you're right, Barbara, some of these classroom styles would suit children with sensory issues or help manage feelings and emotions too. Is this something that DSAT are looking into? Yes, definitely. It's not just about the tech, you're absolutely right. It is also about that side of it as well, absolutely. Especially the cell aspect, social and emotional learning side of it is huge at the minute. So we really are, as you've just said there, really, Barbara, we're trying to get that access for all, not just all age groups, but also all learning styles, all learners really across school. And I think the more you'll see tech being used, the more you'll realise just how powerful this is. It is such an inclusive tool, more than I could ever have imagined. There's things like reading progress that analyses the pupil's reading abilities. So the child can read one-to-one into the device. It records the child reading, and then the teacher can assess how well they've read, but the actual device also analyses what the piece of text that they've read, and it tells you where the misconceptions are, where the omissions are. It's just a very clever way of and very efficient as well for the classroom teacher, especially when they can't always get to listen to every reader in their class. It's another way of doing that. But here you can see a class of Year 1 children. They're logging into their devices. They're very as you know, children are very quick to learn these routines, and they've really grasped the idea that they can log in now, they can get to where they want to. The teacher has modelled already how to access the Paint app that they're going on to, and here you can see they're working in pairs and individually, but their typing skills are improving, their digital inking skills are improving, and their confidence levels are as well. And I put here pupil and teacher confidence levels, because this is, as you know, a journey for teachers and the pupils at the same time, which I think now is really being embraced and really enjoyed by the teachers too. I think there's always that fear that we have to be the fountain of all knowledge, but actually you know, teachers are really appreciating the fact now that it isn't that, and it's absolutely okay to say, I'm not sure how we can do this, let's try and give it a go. And if it goes wrong, it's okay, because that is ultimately what learning is, as we know. Digital linking, Leslie, sorry, digital linking is, so on our laptops, we have touchscreen devices. So the devices, if I just show you, they come with a digital pen. So the children have a stylus in their lessons, and the pupils' devices are touchscreen too. So they can digitally ink onto the device. So I can show you on this slide here, if my pen's going to work, I can just write hello here, and I'm digitally inking hello to you there the slides, and that's what the pupils can do on their devices. So they've got to learn how to do beautiful handwriting on a digital device as well as in their workbooks as well. So there is a little bit of learning to do alongside that, and fitting that into the timetable can sometimes be a bit tricky, but I know the teachers are doing a great job at that now. I hope that's answered the question there, Leslie, and that makes sense. Great. So as you can see there as well, it's also embedding the literacy skills too, the digital literacy skills for pupils. Now, I'll put this slide in because the idea about me mentioning obviously the technology and the learning environments is also because obviously the work environment, university learning environments and college environments are all geared up to this way of working now already. And so for us to also then evolve and move into a very similar way of working will allow children to embrace what they're going to face when they go into whatever career they decide. So the workspaces, as I say, are looking very much like this now. You can see those standing tables here. You've got chairs on wheels, and they swivel round. The tables are also on wheels as well, so again they can move their tables around, put them together or split them up. So you know, it's really about kind of putting those that nice working environment together and showing children what they will probably enter into when they go into the world of work. So what we're saying as well now is that the space where pupils are learning is often referred to as well as the third teacher, because if you have a nice learning environment, you also change the learning behaviours of the pupils in it too, and that's been research proven that's really powerful. So this is another reason why we're looking at those learning spaces, as we said earlier. Now, over time, as I say, and it will be over time, already, you know, in the past, teachers have always played around with the layout of their classroom, but probably not as much as they will do now moving forward with technology, because it does lend itself to different ways of working with the pupils, allowing the pupils to work with each other, and also working maybe with outside experts as well, because on the whiteboard we can invite in experts and they can come and talk to the class as well, virtually, which is great. So looking at this learning space here, we can have demonstration areas in the classroom, collaboration areas, social areas where they might have discussions, and in that area, because it's soft seating, they might feel more relaxed to talk and chat about what they're learning, and it might focus them a bit more. And then you've got experimental teaching spaces as well here. So these are just examples of what teachers might be looking at as they move forward. This is a very forward-thinking slide here, a model you can see, but it's just an example of how these spaces work well and create the best learning opportunities for pupils, and what teachers will be considering over the next few years. So that's the technology and the learning spaces. In terms of what questions you might ask the subject leaders when you're going into school and they're talking about the blended learning here, I just thought I'd list them here and give you some ideas of what you might ask and what answers you might receive. So if you're going into school, you might ask how are you embedding online safety skills alongside the blended learning sessions. And your answer will hopefully be something like, from the teacher that is, that the children are receiving online safety lessons every week, that the school is using filters and they are blocking inappropriate content, and that the apps and the platforms that we're using in the lessons, as well as in computing lessons, are all checked. So we are checking the privacy policies, and we are also looking at the GDPR aspect of everything that we're using in our lessons. As a trust, we're keeping a record of all of those things, just to reassure you that they are all safe. Another question that you might ask is that there are obviously key competencies that you expect to see in blended learning teachers, and if you ask that question, you're hoping to get these kind of answers. You're hoping that the teacher mindset is obviously is open, and it's a growth mindset, that they're accepting of the new vision of the school, and that they are open to that change and that improvement that's going on. You're hoping that the qualities, they've got this grit and this transparency and collaborative approach to this way of learning now, because it does need that element of grit, because obviously there is a learning element here, as I've already mentioned, for the teachers as well as the pupils. And I have to say, in the trust, the teachers are doing a great job, and they show perseverance and bravery all the time with this new way of teaching. Adaptive skills are there as well. They're reflective, they're continuously improving, they are communicating with one another. If they don't know how to do something, they will ask another colleague or another colleague in another school. And their technical skills are also improving as well. We're hoping, you know, obviously they've got those technical abilities for accessing data, but also for the instructional strategies that they use in the classroom, as well as how they manage the blended learning experience in the room as well. So you'd hope to see those sort of answers. Another question you might ask is, how are you supporting staff to craft that school vision? And again, you'll be hoping that they're adapting the blended learning models that I spoke about at the beginning, you know, the station rotation model and the flipped in-class model, where they're pre-recording the lessons. Hopefully that they will also be rethinking the role of the teacher and the learner, as I already mentioned, and that they're understanding that they're more the facilitator of knowledge and the architect of the learning, and they are coaching and mentoring the pupils, and sometimes, as I said, learning alongside them as well, because we're all lifelong learners. Letting go of that control a bit as well, and allowing children to take ownership and control sometimes of aspects of the lesson too, which is sometimes a little bit hard, but I think again staff will be starting to do that, and redesigning their learning spaces, which we've already spoken about. And then how teachers maximise instructional time. Hopefully the answer will be that they are looking at that element of time in their lessons and how they're adapting it, but they're also rethinking about the school day. They're talking to the senior leadership team about that, and asking whether they can just change certain aspects of the school day so it fits in better with what the children need. And I've put here cloning the teacher, and when I say that, I mean looking at that classroom structure, as you can see in this image, and as I said before, putting possibly devices on one of those tables there, so that it's got that pre-recorded lesson on there that one group can access whilst the teacher is teaching the rest of the class face to face. But then when they've finished that pre-recorded lesson, the teacher would then go and support them whilst the rest of the class were getting on with what the teacher had set. So it's a way of cloning yourself and being really clever with that. And again, a school's also thinking about if a teacher is off ill, can they dial in to another school, another teacher's lesson, and that teacher teach in their school with the support of a HLTA possibly in the classroom to help the pupils whilst they're watching that teacher teach live. Again, there's lots of different ways here that we could, you know, clone the teaching experience in schools. And then there's a couple more questions that you might ask as well here. So it might be that you ask, can you personalise the learning for primary pupils? Well, again, it's a journey, but the aim is to move away from that differentiation model and more into a personalised learning model. Design those personalised pathways for pupils. And again, this will take time to embed, and it will take time for teachers to practice and have a go at, but it really is starting to happen. There's pockets of this happening in our schools now. And then making the pathways work, so using QR codes, you know, making it age appropriate, making sure there's weekly reflections going on, and building that into the learning in the classroom. How are you empowering the pupils? So using that formative assessment in the classroom, on the devices, using very short quizzes at the beginning of a lesson or at the end of a lesson, not making the whole lesson about the assessment, but just gauging to see what the pupils understand. Managing data and giving personal targets, and then tapping into pupils' passions. So sometimes, as I said earlier, giving ownership to the pupils and what they're interested in and making learning exciting for them that way. And then what is your digital toolbox? Hopefully teachers will answer that they're designing collaborative learning experiences for the pupils, that they're using adaptive tools for self-paced lessons and learning, and they're amplifying the pupils' voice. So they're using things like Flipgrid, Kahoot, and video to record the pupils so that they know how they feel about their learning, and they're giving them that reflection time. If you ask the question, how can teachers embrace and improve their professional learning? Hopefully, again, you'll get the answer that they're collaborating with their colleagues, they're connecting with stakeholders, so they're talking to governors, they're talking to SLT and with the community, and they're owning their professional learning. So they're using the teacher development time that we've put into place as a trust, and they're researching, they're practicing skills, they're looking at technology, and they're finding out how it will work with their classes. And then finally, where do teachers start? So if you come across a teacher that is possibly finding this difficult, a great starting point is just to start small. So just start with one app, one thing, and make sure that they embed it well, that they plan to sustain it. So they embed it well and then move on to the next thing. They don't move on to something else until they're really happy with it and the children can use it well in their class. And that they persevere with it, and they're just brave, and they take a leap of faith, because I think sometimes that is also what using technology and changing your learning spaces is all about. Now, if you are interested in the reimagining of the other learning spaces and getting active, then there is a course on the Microsoft Educator Centre, which I'll show you in a moment, that you can do, or there is a PDF that you can also access that's listed just here that talks you through what that looks like. You might find that it's probably more secondary based, but there are some really nice elements in there that and some good ideas. But another way to really find out what's going on with this blended learning approach is to visit the schools when you can, when staff are happy for you to do it. I know at the moment we're running open days, so if you can come to any of the open days that we've offered, would be great. You know, it'd be great to see you there. I know it's difficult with time, but if you can make it, that's great. So school visits are brilliant, so to see what's happening in the live lessons. To visit schools outside of the trust as well. We've just recently, as a trust, some of the staff, some of the head teachers and deputies and blended learning champions have been to visit 2 schools. One was Newark Hill in Cambridgeshire, and the other one was Danesfield Primary School in Marlow. And we went to see their learning journey and what it looked like in their school. And it was great to have that discussion with other schools to see what their children understood and how they were using the different platforms and applications. It was just nice to have that reassurance that we were all on the same learning pathway, and to gain some good tips and tricks as well. If you are not, again, if you want to speak to somebody about this, especially the learning spaces, the development of that, then Nathan Odom is a good person to contact in the trust. Also David Briggs in terms of the curriculum and how this is all evolving, and as well Sarah Sadler and Mick Beck would also be more than happy to speak to you about this. They apologise that they couldn't be here today, but they would be more than happy to speak to you about this further if you did want to talk to them and contact them. And obviously there's me as well. If you can't contact any of those, I am more than happy to talk about this again with you too. So I spoke about the MEC, the Microsoft Education Centre. This is something you can access on the web. You can just go on, type in Microsoft Education Centre. It's got lots of different learning courses on there, all about Office 365, all the apps that are on there, but also about the 21st century lesson design and learning pathways, and what we want this to look like for children. So this is where the teachers go and do all of their learning and upskilling. But again, it might be somewhere that you would like to go and have a look. What I've spoken about today with the active learning and these learning spaces and environments, that's on this pathway here called the student-centered learning If you go onto the Mick and put that in, you can access the information or more information about that. But if you do register on the Mick, you can also get a profile, your own profile, and any courses that you do on there, it will create this little transcript for you, and it will record all your badges and certificates. So it's a little bit like your own CPD area as well, which is why we're using it with staff too. So it's a nice place to just look at. We're nearly there. I'm sure you're grateful of that. The last few slides here, just to understand that, as I said earlier, this is a transformational time for education, and that each school is on its own journey. But I think this quote is quite nice. Transformation is about more than technology. The goal is to enable a complete reimagining of learning anytime, anywhere, and to be ruthless in studying and adjusting when and how technology makes things better. And you can just see here's some pupils in one of our schools, again, just enjoying the technology that they've got access to in school. One of the models that we are also using in school is called the SAMR model, and I never say this in the right way, it's SAMR model, and it's how to integrate the technology properly and effectively. We don't just want our classroom to be substituting part of a lesson with tech and the tech making no real difference. The lesson could happen without the tech, basically. We want to get to this stage where we're redefining the lesson with the use of technology, that the lesson couldn't happen unless the technology was there. So, for example, we couldn't immerse pupils in the visit to London without having the virtual reality headsets, because the pupils can't just imagine what London's like. They need to see images, they need to hear the sounds. And that's what the virtual reality headsets do. They immerse the child in that experience, and then the child has that full understanding of what they've seen, and they can apply the right language, the right vocabulary to that context. And when they're writing about London, they can use more powerful adjectives or better sentence structure because they've had that experience. And so that piece of tech is redefining that lesson. It's transformational. So we're not just using tech as a substitution. We don't just want it to as an augmentation tool. We want it to modify and to redefine our lessons. So this is where we're aiming our the lessons at, really, when we're using that tech. And then just finally, I was just going to show you a couple of minutes of this video clip, which is some of our teachers talking about the journey so far for them. The blended learning in the classroom has really evolved, and they have moved forward with confidence. And this just shows a few of those teachers talking about how they've gone about this. I'll just show you about 3 minutes of this, not too long. The clip is about 10 minutes, but I can send you the link to that later if you do want to watch the rest of it. But I just wanted to say that on this journey, we need to keep in mind that the key metrics of blended learning are timing and pace, budgets, pupil feedback, teacher feedback, and learning outcomes. And I think in the next few years, blended learning will hopefully just be seen as learning. It won't be this mysterious blended learning anymore. It will just be what we do. And because our schools have embraced it and they've had the ambition and the patience to embed it really well. So I will stop talking now and just let you watch a couple of minutes of this video clip here. If it will work, I'm hoping it will. I might need to reshare it in a different way. Just see if it will work.
Nothing coming through, Joe.
No sound, and the video's just paused.
Okay. Okay, I will just reshare in a different way if that's okay. Bear with me a minute. Just going to jump out of that screen and into this one, and hopefully you'll be able to see it in a moment. Let me just see if I can just open that one up. That's not the right one. Always good when we get the right one. There we go. There it is. That's the one. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom and hopefully you will be able to see the video clip in a minute. And I've just realised I'll still need to reshare because I've not put the sound button on again. That's not good, is it? Bear with me. There we go. So that should play now, hopefully.
I think it's just because obviously it's a daily thing. We use laptops in daily life, and I think we're going to be using applications a lot more in the future. There's things going everywhere at the moment with applications, so it's only going to improve their knowledge.
So if they can't type, they might not be able to send a CV in terms of work. The quicker we get them into that, the quicker they can use it at secondary school, they can move on to college or university or whatever they need to. But it's the way the world's going. There's not many handwritten stuff anymore, and there's not many things you do without technology. You've always got a phone at your hand. Why not teach them to actually use it properly?
It's 50-50 now in the world that we are leading, and the generation that our children, as they get older, and how technology is going to be so important in their everyday life, just as it is for us now.
Well, because they're going to be going into the workplace, and that's what they're going to use. They're going to use laptops every day, they're going to use computers every day, so it's important that they get a head start now in knowing what they need to do for the future, because that's what they're going to use when they go into secondary school, university, college, and into the workplace as well.
Teachers' confidence now is extremely high. Teachers aren't afraid to have a go. So when we suggest something, or whether they, when they experience something on the Mick, or when there's been an update, for instance, in OneNote or within Teams, which they have to adapt to, they're not afraid of doing that because they know it works. We made it a prerequisite for us to say that we wanted Joe to come in every 3 weeks. 2:30 to 3:30 working with support staff, and then 3:30 till 5 with our teachers. And the teachers and support staff would set the agenda for those. What are you struggling on? What else do you want to look at? Let's look at the Mick together. Having that support network there is absolutely integral, because if you can build that confidence within your staff, then the staff won't be afraid to use it within the classroom and introduce it to their teachers. And I think it's schools that I look at now that perhaps aren't as far ahead of us haven't made that the priority of using that training that's out there to do that.
It has. It's been really, really useful. Obviously, we know that we've got Joe to go to if we ever need support. You ain't come back straight away. You're always there, so it's great to know that you are on hand with that. But in terms of going through the things that we've been doing at school, the whole having computers for themselves, and they just get on. They just want to show what they're made of. At the moment, they're writing historical narratives, and they said, "Can we type them?" And they've been typing them up and showing all that additional creativity and what they can do on a laptop, but also showcasing it into their everyday lessons. It's been really exciting.
If we hadn't had the continued professional development sessions with Joe, we wouldn't be aware of a lot of these apps and how to effectively use the Microsoft suite. There is no way I'd have known all of those ways that we could use it. I'd have probably stuck to using Word within Teams, and maybe if I'd felt a little bit brave, using OnetoOne.
So I'll just stop there. I will send you that link if you would like to see the rest of that clip. It's quite a nice one to watch. The teachers go on to say how it's been really worthwhile, and now they wouldn't be without it, which is quite a place to be, really, after a whole year's journey. I think we thought it would take about 3 years, but actually to be where we are now is absolutely amazing, and they've done a great job. So I hope some of that has been useful tonight, and sorry, Peter, that we lost you there, but it is recorded, so hopefully you'll be able to watch this back. Are there any questions before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening? Do you have any questions about that?
Can I ask a couple of things?
Absolutely.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's really great to see. It's amazing. It blows me away. I'm a bit long in the tooth now in teaching, and of course, you know, I came out of it 11 years ago, so things have moved on so fast. But you know, as a chair of an AB, there is a great concern here. There's the excitement of having all this technology.
Yeah.
But we're in a climate of shrinking budgets.
Yeah.
How on earth are managers, head teachers going to cope with this? I mean, seeing those VR headsets, I mean, goodness knows what they cost. I mean, it's brilliant, but how on earth are schools going to do it? And, you know, you say about repurposing furniture. Well, primary schools, unless it's early years, don't have a lot of that furniture you were showing.
Yeah.
You know, it's mega money we're talking about, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you, Leslie. I think in terms of the STEM equipment that you saw, the VR headsets and the drones and those other devices, I think when I speak to other EdTech schools, I always talk about our model as a trust, and whether they're in a trust or not, I think actually collaborating with other schools in their local area to purchase that piece of equipment is worth doing. So just putting in, I'm not saying that easily, because I know money is tight, but that's what we did as a trust. Those 13 schools have put money in, you know, a bit each, and we purchased all of that collaboratively together, and they share it. And I think moving forward, if schools can do that, it's a really powerful model to try and use. I do appreciate what you're saying about the furniture, though. When I talk to the heads, that they say exactly the same as you've just said there. You know, how is that going to happen? And I agree that I am not sure how that's supposed to happen, but I think if we can get there somehow, it would be a phenomenal task. I don't think primary, it's going to be there for a long time. I do think it's probably more, possibly secondary might get there faster, but again, this is looking at years ahead. This is sort of 3 to 10 years, that I think that model there, Leslie. I definitely agree with you. It's not an easy one, but I think
it's exciting to look at it, isn't it? And
yes, it's aspirational. I think that's it. Yeah.
The other thing I was going to ask is about teacher training, not teachers who are already qualified, but, and again, I've lost track of this now. Do all, let's say, student teachers, are they learning on the job, or, you know, are some still learning in university, in which case what sort of input do you know that they're having to be prepared to come into this environment?
Yes, so our skit runs, so the teachers are in the schools, but they are also having university support as well. As a trust within the skit, then we're offering them the insight. So we're running our own training, so that they know what's coming, and they know what skill set they've got to have in terms of technology. Other skits are also trying to do the same. I know that they're gradually becoming on board with it more and more now. They see that this isn't going away. It's not just about remote learning, that it is something, it's a skill set that children need. They need to have that digital understanding. So it is something that moving forward for early careers teachers that we are embedding, especially within our own skit at the moment.
Thank you very much. It's been fascinating.
Thank you, Leslie. Peter, did you have a question? Let me see if I can unmute you. Sorry, bear with me a moment. There we go. Does that work, Peter? just unmuted you, so you should be able to talk now. Sorry, Peter, maybe you can type it in the chat bar if you put your question there, and I'll try to answer it if you can't use the mic. Barbara, are you back, Peter?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes, hello.
Okay. On the cost of equipment, there is a big IT company in Leicester, I think it's Microsoft. Might it be worth seeing if we could work with them a bit to get some help, because they like to look to work with educational organisations. Might it be a thing which the trust could go and have a chat with them?
Absolutely, we are working with them currently. Out of the 13 schools that we have 5 schools that are called they're called incubator schools. So they're going to have this year of training with Microsoft, and then at the end of this year they will become Microsoft Showcase schools. So we have linked with Microsoft, but unfortunately they don't give out many of their funds, unfortunately, but they do share their training and their expertise. But
Right.
yeah, financially, unfortunately, there isn't much support. But yeah, it's a great idea. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I think, sorry, Barbara just put, amazing to see the developments that can happen. Help children to learn in the future. It will raise some interesting conversations in my AB over the next coming years. Yes, absolutely. And how it will be funded. I agree. It's all about the funding. I know we're looking at the moment as well at leasing options too, so that it can be a regular commitment coming out of the budget year on year, rather than something that's going to have to be added to all of the time and heads have to find the money and the funding for. But that is very much something we're investigating and researching at the minute. Hi, Barbara.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, is there anything coming out of central government, you know, obviously not the next couple of financial years, but if we're moving towards, you know, more inclusive classrooms, you know, and more technology coming into that, you know, through kind of, you know, the SEND budgets and kind of central government budgets for funding for schools, is there any movement in that to use that for adjusting classrooms so they are more inclusive?
The hope is that it will improve. At the moment, what they're doing, and you've probably heard of this already, the DfE are providing laptops for children from year 3 upwards, from disadvantaged and vulnerable backgrounds. So they do provide those, and they've just done I think this is their 3rd round of providing devices. So we've just had some of those come into the trust. But in terms of the funding you just mentioned, not at the moment. Nothing's been said, unfortunately, but hopefully they'll consider it. Thank you for your questions. They're great. It's I think it's one of the best discussions I've had on one of these webinars. So thank you very much. If there isn't any more questions though this evening, thank you very much for joining me this evening. I will stop there and let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. And but if you do have any questions or you want to know any more information about this, please email me, send me a message, and I'll contact you after this and send you the PowerPoint and the links that I mentioned as well, if that's okay.
Thank you, Jo.
Take
care.
Thank
Lovely
you.
Christmas. Bye.
Yes, and you.
Hello, Joe, are you there?
Yes. Hi,
Yeah.
Peter. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
just reading your message now.
Yeah.
I'll just stop recording and then.
Okay.